Good morning, Devils fans. We actually got another Tommy Fitz interview, thanks to Jimmy Murphy of Murphy's Hockey Law podcast. And I always like covering especially Fitz's interviews because I think he provides a lot of insight in his answers, doesn't really beat around the bush too much, and typically will just tell you how it is. And of course, just listening to his inner workings and what his vision was and is for the team also gives us great ideas on potential moves he's looking to make, where he sees where the team is at, and again, just gives us a better look into the inner workings of the team. So, I did start off the podcast just asking how the summer had gone, and you can tell how great this summer felt for Fitz. He talks about how in past summers it was always chaos, especially when he first took over, with it being the COVID season and having the expansion draft. And then you had these big contract negotiations, like Brett specifically, arbitration cases, and just basically was always chock full of craziness, especially when you've got multiple first round picks. When, again, in COVID, you weren't able to travel and you're doing just lots more of video and phone calls and everything, trying to get all that put together. And so that this summer was quite a bit different. Really, most things that he needed to do was wrapped up before the draft with the Timo and Bratt trades. There was some cleaning up with some other RFAs, but there was no real major hurdles with any of those deals. And after they got through development camp, it was really just vacation time for them. They had a few hockey ops in-house meetings that have gone on since then, but really it has been a mostly relaxing summer for the Devils front office, which to me just shows the confidence in where the team is at and how it is structured, and that other than maybe a single deal that they are just trying to beat through, not too much else should be expected to go on as far as signings or moves for the rest of this off season. Going back into how he mentions the crazy off seasons around COVID, he did say that the long off season that COVID provided for us, since we were one of only a handful of teams that weren't invited to the crazy playoffs that year, really helped our young guys in giving them all the extra time in the gym that they normally wouldn't have ever gotten. And I definitely agree there. You can tell that a lot of our young guys came in a lot more physically matured thanks to that off season. It was also something we talked about, just me amongst other fans at the time, that it stinks not being in that playoff play-in. But given where our team was at and where our young guys are at, I'm actually pretty glad on how that worked out, and I think it's very clear the dividends it has paid out since then. He did have weekly calls with scouts during that time, like I said, especially the EU scouts not being able to fly during COVID. And since it was Fitzy's first draft and having 3 first-rounders, he really wanted to nail this one and get it right. So the mandate he gave to his guys was we wanted the highest ceiling, best chance of being stars possible, at least in the earlier rounds and even into the mid and late rounds. He wasn't looking for those 80% third liners. He wasn't looking for those 100% guaranteed fourth liners. Instead, he was looking at the 10% chance of becoming first line stars, and those were the guys he's targeted. I know he'll probably get pushed back on that, talking about the Chase Stillman pick. I still will defend that to a point because Stillman completely missed a season, so you were projecting off of his trajectory from 2 seasons prior. And if you look at it that way, I can kind of see how you can look at that as a home run type swing. Now, you could argue, could we have gotten him with one of those more earlier picks? Probably. Could we have swung on another guy that had just as much, if not more upside, that had a better trajectory based on the seasons prior and all that? Probably. But hey, our top 6 is insanely stacked. And, then you would argue Stillman is probably better as a trade piece then, as being a more highly touted prospect as compared to coming in and likely to be a fourth line, best case scenario third line guy for this team. Yeah, but hey, every other pick I think has been almost a home run. Even the Muka Madulin pick that was criticized at the time got us Timo Meier, so can't really complain too much about that one now. As far as young guys that came in during his tenures that really blew his socks away, the obvious answer and the one he went with was Dawson Mercer. Goes on to say that he pulled off a Jesper Bratt, where he comes into camp as a first-timer and forces his way onto the team. And hard to argue against that, and I'm sure we would all say Dawson Mercer is on that same trajectory. I know a lot of us talk about trying to get Mercer already locked up for those long-term deals, but just look into the insight he gave on the Bratt deal to give us kind of an idea of what we might see with Mercer, although obviously a bit of different players. especially given where the team is at now. You want to structure those contracts a bit differently. But that being said, he said that coming out of the ELC, they probably easily could have done a 6-7 year deal with Brett. But at the time, they knew he was very good. They just weren't sure how good at that point he was. So they ended up doing a 2-year deal, even though the team would have preferred that be a 3-year deal. The first year of that deal was essentially a half season thanks to COVID. And so it very quickly already became the second year of that deal. It was very close, the arbitration case with Bratt, but they did get a last minute 1-year deal out of that. And then we now know the long-term deal with Bratt locked up here. Is that going to be the same exact pathway that Mercer ends up on? I don't know. We know from the Bratt interview that he was very much so about doing those short-term deals for himself. Is Dawson that same pedigree of player or same mindset of player? Yet to be seen, so we'll see exactly how those play out. Fitz did go on to say that he's not a big fan of the arbitration process just because of the tumultuous nature of it, but that really, for the most part, team and player kind of sit on the sidelines as the PA and lawyers go at it. Now, obviously, a lot of what is talked about in the case does get back to the player, but he did enjoy the fact that him and the agent were able to come together last minute for those discussions to, hash out what these deals ended up being. It goes on to say, back when he was an assistant GM, interim GM, when asked about if there was any young guys he was eyeing when making that transition, Fitz says after his mentor Ray was let go and he was offered the job, he had to do some soul searching on was this the path he wanted to take and the team he wanted to take it with. And after talking with management about keeping on some of the staff that they had already had established there, and then talking with them about who the pillars and identity of this team were going to be, while it was pretty easy, they did go on to talk about Jack, Nico, and Bratt being the big three that they wanted to build around and how to asset manage around that with vets they wanted to move out for bringing in better future assets and then building through the draft. And I think it's very evident that they had a plan put in place. They have stuck with it and executed it very well. 2021 was the learn to win phase about time management within a game. At the ends of it, playing the right style of game to win when you have a lead, blocking shots, more dump-ins rather than controlled entries and the riskier type plays. 2022 was about making it into the second round, which we did. Won one game there, but it was more so about getting that playoff experience and winning around and knowing what that feels like. And now 2023, he did say this is the winning the cup phase. So the mandate is there. We'll see if the team pulls through. It does go on to say, doesn't need to motivate anyone within New York, from players to staff. Everyone here is very hungry to win, and they come into the office, to the rink, etc. every day with that mindset. No one needs the extra kick in the butt to get that done. All winning teams need to mature and learn from the ups and downs of playoffs, and now the guys here have an idea about that, but that there is still probably another step or two needed to be taken to get there. Sure, it really just depends on how you want to read between the lines on the step or two needed. I really just think it's the guys playing our game and learning to adjust within series and then from series to series, because like we heard from Bratt, going from New York, 1-day turnaround essentially into the Canes series was just quite a bit jarring for our players. So now they have that. Now they know that. They have a full regular season to build towards the playoffs and work through that now as a team. And you having that experience, it's now time to take that next step. When talking about how teams need the learning lesson from playoffs before finally winning the cup, asked did Tom, Lindy, anyone as far as staff or management need to go in and discuss and relay that part of the game to the players, Fitz emphatically said no, and wanted to really make the point that it was the players in the room that have to do that. It has to come from within the room itself, and that we have the guys in the room that did that and recognize that, and everyone there knows what this means. It should not come from Tom. It should not come from Lindy. The players don't need to hear it from them. Again, has to come from within the room. Murphy asks him about areas of weakness that we wanted to address, and Tom goes on to say that the past couple seasons he really wanted to get bigger and more mobile on the back end. Talks about bringing in Dougie, Graves, and Siegenthaler, and how we had guys like Ball on the horizon to fill in that role. Specifically staying in that area, he says that losing guys like Graves and Sivo, it's very hard to replace that veteran presence. But when we've got guys like Ball who can come in and fill in the hard defensive minutes that Graves was, and Luke filling in the offensive role that Sivo was. Yeah, they're both going to make mistakes, but we got the vets that are there to help facilitate them in those roles, and it's going to be a growing process, but he is very, very confident in our young guys being able to step up and do just that. Obviously, on top of that, previously going through 7 goalies in a single season was not ideal. They did address that with the team from the previous offseason, looking at our numbers, we looked great, and really it was about bringing in and getting at least league average goaltending. And so with VTech being brought in, we got more than that, and we saw how the season this year went. So for this year, with VTech still there, and now Schmid getting a chance to prove himself over a full season at this level, he is quite confident in what we are going to be working with in the goalie area. That being said, he did say that even though the media chatter around how much goalie movement was supposed to happen this offseason, he wasn't surprised that it didn't really work out this way. It is the most volatile position in hockey, as we have seen, especially for our team. And so he is sticking with his guns with this guy. But again, he says it's really a coin flip, but he believes that they will be good enough to take us to where we need to be. Harking back to a previous conversation, they talk about Ray, and Fitz obviously has admiration for Shiro, being the one that brought him into management. How they started off making a cup finals right away, being brought in behind the bench to winning a cup over in Pittsburgh, and just growing a lot together over the years. He says they are similar, but also very different. The biggest thing they took away from Ray was being patient with deals, whether that's trades or signing guys. And I think that is evident very clearly that Fitz really follows in the footsteps of Ray there, because we all talked about how great a lot of Ray's trades were and signings. And I think Tom is even better. Not doing those knee-jerk reactions. Murphy follows up by bringing up the big one, obviously the Timo deal. And how Tom says even members of his staff and the team around him were antsy and hoping to get that deal done quicker. But it was being patient is how you get those types of deals done and how you get the most out of those types of deals. And seeing how the Timo deal all came together and what we had to give up to get them. Yeah, please keep being patient, Tom. You are absolutely crushing in that area. And that's really where they wrapped up the interview. There wasn't really too much new info here from Tom that he gave us, but instead really just talked about where he sees the team going and how confident he is with it. And that's really all we've been talking about this offseason as well. Definitely check it out if you haven't watched it. There is a bit of audio issues with Tom and connection issues throughout it, but not too bad. We get a lot of the main details that come through in the end. Speaking of, I know I've been getting a lot of feedback with audio issues here for this stream or these videos. So I did change it up a little bit. You'll notice the different angle of a background. I have a different mic setup, different computer setup. So hopefully this is a bit better. I'm looking forward to hearing back from all of you on, is it an improvement? Do you guys not care so much about the background and just would prefer just a better audio situation, which I would completely understand. If that's the case, I love having the Devil's background, whether it is my big wall in the other room or at least the banner here. So if this audio setup works out a lot better, I'm going to try and figure out a way to keep this while getting a better angled background for all of you. So all that being said, let me know what you guys think about Tom. Let me know what you guys think about my audio. I will see you tomorrow morning. We will be getting into the weekend. Let's get through this last work day. And as always and forever, let's go Devils.